remember telling a friend of mine, I said, they're going to win the NCAA championship this year. Well, we go all the way through undefeated, and there's Magic standing there. It's just like it was made to happen.
Yeah, everything was written with Bird versus Magic, Magic versus Bird, that whole thing. And it wasn't Indiana State versus Michigan State anymore. It was Larry Bird versus Magic Johnson.
Perhaps we've never seen a final game with two greater individual players than Larry Bird, the Player of the Year from Indiana State, and the Magic Man from East Lansing, Irvin Johnson.
You know, a lot of people were surprised yesterday, Larry, when you mentioned that you played ball with Magic Johnson in the World Invitational Tournament.
Well, you know, me and Magic played together in that game, and you know, it's funny because Magic's such a great passer, but he wouldn't give me the ball. And, you know, and I need the ball.
Well, I hope he don't think I'm gonna pass it to him tonight either. But I thought I passed him the ball. Maybe he forgot it.
Johnson, Magic Johnson with the ball. Oh, he scores! And he is fouled. Look at Irvin Magic Johnson. Bird. Oh, what a shooter. It's all over. Michigan State University, national champions, 1979.
March 26th, 1979 would be the day the NBA is saved. The historical day in Salt Lake City, Utah for the 1979 NCAA Men's Basketball National Championship game, which is still the highest rated basketball game ever. Michigan State's Irving Magic Johnson versus Indiana State's Larry Joe Bird. Even though it was the very first time these two budding stars faced off, from that day on, they would become inseparable for their entire professional basketball playing career. Of course, Magic and Bird still did reignite the league with their rivalry. But is it so simple that we boil it down to just hard-fought and honest competition? D.A.T.A. Productions has always felt that the National Basketball Association wrote better scripts than Hollywood. What if, to save the league and finally capture a large audience for decades to come, the National Basketball Association incorporated powerful and biblical stories in their viewing product to captivate the viewer more and have them emotionally invested? Most of us already know that sports are rigged and scripted, but why do they still hold so much power over the population? What's so magical about the NBA? I believe it to be the fact that the controllers of the NBA script know how to manipulate the game in a way that tells a subconsciously compelling story that we all can relate to on a higher spiritual level. What made this rivalry so intricate and powerful was that Johnson represented black magic in Los Angeles, Hollywood, California, the movie capital of the world, while Larry represented the Great Horned Owl, or Moloch, the Old Northeastern Society at Yale, the elite Skull and Bone Society, Club 322. The decade-long storyline between the two was the athletic theatrical manifestation of the white man, Larry Bird, wrestling with black Magic Johnson to create an esoterically pleasing spectacle. So the very first successful storyline in the NBA was an autobiography of the ones who created this entertainment to begin with. Then when scaling back and simplifying the storyline being told with Magic and Larry, it will bring you to the story of Boaz and Jachin, the pillars at the front of Solomon's temple in Jerusalem.
At the front of the temple were two large bronze pillars that flanked the porch. The pillar on the left was named Boaz, and the pillar on the right was named Jachin. The tops were decorated with lily flower petals and pomegranates. Pomegranates were a sign of prosperity and posterity because of their many seeds, and were also found on the bottom hem of the clothing of the high priest.
The story of light and darkness, duality, polarity, the cycle of energy. This NBA matchup was teaching the masses the basic principles of life via athletic theater. Being that Irvin Magic Johnson and Larry Joe Bird was perfectly scripted to a T to get the best energetic result for viewership, I will be exclusively using the 4 ciphers used to decode scripture and entertainment. The Francis Bacon and the Franck Baconist cipher with their respective reverses. Please refer back to my video breakdown of the Francis Bacon ciphers and the introductory decodes to the Magic vs. Bird storyline.
Still today. Then we both go on. You go to the Boston Celtics, which I don't know who did this. The basketball gods shine down on us. Basketball gods shine down on us. You end up with Boston. I end up in LA. We went on to win many championships.
And knowing you was on the West Coast, I was on the East Coast, I was just dreaming about another chance maybe I get to play against you.
Yeah, well, you know what? The NCAA finals created this rivalry that now fans could carry over to the NBA. And then we were able to meet a couple times in the finals.
It's not an exaggeration to say that the rivalry between Magic Johnson and Larry Bird brought the NBA out of the dark ages. In the late 70s, the league was plagued by empty arenas, a tape delay final, and a terrible reputation. But the buzz created by these titans simply couldn't be ignored. Larry and Magic first played against one another in the 1979 National Championship when Johnson's Michigan State Spartans topped Bird's undefeated Indiana State Sycamores. Together, they produced the highest-rated national championship game in history.
Well, that Reed has hit three. Oh, there's the pass. Look at Johnson. It's all over. Michigan State University, national champions, 1979.
Once entering the pros, the greatness of both was immediately undeniable. The duo claimed 3 straight titles to start the 80s, with Magic nabbing the crown in 1980, his rookie season, Bird getting his first in 81, Magic coming back again in 82. 1984 was the first of 3 legendary finals matchups. It went 7 games, ending with the Celtics victorious and Bird holding the finals MVP. 1985, a different tune, as they met in the finals a second time, with Magic emerging victorious in 6 games. Bird won his 3rd title the next season after Magic's Lakers were tripped up in the Western Finals. But more notably, the two linked up for a commercial shoot at Larry's mother's house, promoting their own Converses, turning fierce rivals into lifelong friends.
I heard Converse made a pair of Bird shoes for last year's MVP.
Yep.
When they made a pair of Magic shoes for this year's MVP.
Okay, Magic, show me what you got.
The 87 finals, it was all business again. The two met for a 3rd and final time. Magic claimed the MVP in a 6-game series win. From 1979 to 89, Bird and Magic combined for 8 titles, drove up TV ratings and attendance, and influenced an entire generation to fall in love with the game of basketball.
There'll be some important decisions made tonight before this sellout crowd of 15,000.
We are getting set here for what promises to be one tremendous championship game for the National Intercollegiate Basketball title. I don't know what more you could ask. You know, we started this season, 6 months ago. If you'd have tabbed it right then on 2 of the storybook stories.
The like in secrecy, contained within the most precious of things, one light, one dark, reflections of the self, broken now, except within one's consciousness. The arcane task to build them up once more within the confines of the human soul, to stride inside the portal of the ancients and grasp eternity and its creations. Mother Goddess, mistress of the dream realm, beckon me forth to walk between your legs, but do not crush me as I make my final journey back inside the womb of infinity. Please, great architect of the universe, bestow on me your compass made of gold. Hold me steady as I draw my own circle of life and death and rebirth of my soul.
It all began here in Salt Lake City, Utah, on the night of March 26, 1979. It was the NCAA championship, Indiana State versus Michigan State, a game that still ranks as the highest-rated college final ever on television. A game that's now remembered is a prologue to a rivalry that transformed a sport and intertwined two legacies. But on that night, March 26, 1979, the first time Magic Johnson and Larry Bird ever went head-to-head on a basketball court. They were simply two young men trying to win a very big ball game.
Well, this is probably the biggest game I'll ever play in my life, and I just feel like, you know, I'm representing not only myself, my team, but we're representing our school and our town of Terre Haute.
Well, it's a dream come true, really, for me. I won the state title back in my home state, and then my next accomplishment was going to the NCAA and playing in a game like tonight in the finals.
They were two stars thrown together by the cosmos to compete. But only one of them had been groomed for the spotlight. His talent was so great that soon after his varsity debut, a local reporter, dazzled by his exploits, gave the budding star a nickname.
In the beginning, I thought it was foolish and dumb. You know, I didn't know nothing about a nickname. Then what happened was, you start saying, wait a minute, it fits my game. Hanging out with my boys on the street corners, we used to sing Temptation songs. They started saying, hey man, Magic, that's cool. And then people on the street started saying, hey Magic. And I said,
He bought into it, and I think he felt he had to kind of live up to that name. And I must say that he did.
It said, it's Magic.
He was a star when he first arrived here, coming off the NC2A game. And quickly, during that first season, he became one of the stars in town. But that game put him on another level. That made him the star in town.
It's funny how I wanted to meet the celebrities, but they wanted to meet me. I was like shocked. Like, wow, you know who I am?
He was young, famous, and after Lakers owner Jerry Buss signed him to a 25-year, $25 million contract, very rich. To prove to himself and the world that with the ball in his hands, he was still the one in control.
Lit the place up. Changed the franchise, changed the temperament. I changed it from the very first game.
Skyhook up and good. Lakers win.
Here it was, the first game of a long season against the lowly Clippers. And Magic was embracing Kareem as if they'd just won their 10th straight championship. It was like, man, this is a different kind of dude.
From the day he arrived, he became the prince of the city. He had it, what it is. As far as I was concerned, the it was not his ability or his size, the it was his attitude, was his leadership, was his mind.
Now let's look at the light pillar of Jachin marked with the J. This is the solar pillar, and these are the qualities that are pretty readily able to be seen by others.
Magic Johnson was living on a natural high. He was starring in the role of a lifetime, point guard of a Hollywood team with an offense called Showtime.
The power of the Holly. Think of one of the most successful areas of creative energy and business in the world. It's Hollywood.
He even had the alter ego perfect for the production.
I mean, Magic was his stage name. Even he would laugh about it.
Well, he always says there's two people. There's Irvin Johnson from East Lansing, and there's Magic Johnson from Hollywood.
Irvin Johnson is another guy. You know, here's Magic over here and here's Irvin over here.
I really do believe he looks upon Magic Johnson as a movie character he played. I think Irvin got overwhelmed in LA by what it meant to be a star.
That's probably true that the Magic ego swallowed Irvin a little bit.
At MSU, Magic's star quickly went national. But atop the college game, he soon discovered a certain presence beside him.
The first time I saw Larry Bird was actually in a magazine. Saw his stats, blown away by his stats.
but let's see if he can really do it against us. And that's always a mindset of black players if he's a great white player.
The NBA had this image of an all-black league with a bunch of guys who did drugs. The teams were losing money, and they had no sponsors.
And in the newest member of the Boston Celtics, that's exactly what the league appeared to be getting.
There's hope he can help solve professional basketball's difficulties, which some say are compounded by a question of black and white.
The great white hope, what does that mean?
Well, you know, it's very hard to say because there's a lot of great white players.
When the owl spirit animal wings into your awareness, it's time to tap into your deepest self. Sometimes truths can be hidden. Either we're blind to them, or darkness cloaks the real story.
But such curtness was hardly strange coming from Larry Bird, who was not only one of college basketball's best players, but also its biggest enigma.
I think he was a mystery to the extent that he wanted to be a mystery. He didn't enjoy doing interviews. He didn't go out of his way to do them. He wasn't particularly good at them. He was kind of like, hey, this is who I am. You want to know who I am? Watch the game. That's who I am.
I start to read materials that you're very quiet and you don't enjoy talking to newspaper people.
Well, you know, there's different kind of newspaper people. There's people that try to push you. You know, there's people try to get things out of you. Things don't even pertain to basketball, and them are the type of people I like to stay away from.
He didn't want people talking about his family. He didn't want his mother to have to deal with that, or his siblings to have to deal with that.
The B stands for Boaz, which is what this pillar is referred to as in Freemasonry, the pillar of Boaz. These are the pillars that were outside of the Temple of Solomon, because the seal of Solomon, or what is known as the Star of David, as the previous caller also mentioned, is the unification, stands for the unification of the spiritual and the material, and the unification of the masculine and the feminine. Okay? It is ultimately about the unification of our emotions and our actions. That's ultimately what this symbol represents. The top of the pillar of Boaz there, underneath the moon, because this is the lunar or feminine side, okay? These are about innate aspects, all right? The unseen, that which is not carried on the outside, but that which is pretty much dwelling within us. What the dark occultists, who are ultimately the masters of this reality right now, as it stands, that is unfortunately true, that is unfortunately the case. They are controlling the entire game here, so to speak. The reason they are able to do this is because they are in possession of this information, which they have subsequently occulted from the rest of humanity. The occult is simply information that has been hidden.
Occult ideas became embedded in the traditions of secret societies, such as the Freemasons and the Rosicrucians.
They were tending to do them passed on among secret brotherhoods and organizations because these are very powerful and dangerous ideas, dangerous to status quo, dangerous to institutionalized religion. So there's an element of underground secrecy associated with some of these themes.
These havens of safety began to flourish across Europe. Secret societies were instrumental in the new age of enlightenment that swept through Europe in the 1700s and even helped in the founding of American democracy.
The fame of the secret societies at Yale College, or for their detractors, their notoriety, springs from the confluence of four circumstances of their existence. First is the large shadow cast by Yale in our country's political history for half the 19th and all the 20th centuries. The second is the sustained prominence over almost 2 centuries of the Society's initiates in all phases of American life, about to be discussed here in more detail. And third, not to be overlooked, the proximity of New Haven to New York City, the nation's social, financial, and media capital, resulting in frequent press reports of society elections and the controversies surrounding them. The final circumstance, maybe why you're here, but that's all right, is the provoking secrecy maintained by their initiates after being tapped. The New York Times entitled an article, "Nude Wrestling? Good Practice for Politics." This opening managed to marry the description of a legendary ritual of skull and bones, about which you will not hear tonight. Membership in a senior society at Yale has long been both a reward for undergraduate leadership on the campus, a reward bestowed by outgoing seniors on upcoming juniors, not by the faculty, and a spur to further achievement in after-college life. And Yale College outstripped all its rivals, including Harvard, which was almost 7 decades older, in the category of statesman. The cyclopedia concluded, Yale seems to be more American than Harvard. Public life, politics, statesmanship represent a very important part of American life. Therefore, a larger number of distinguished men of Yale do we find in statesmanship than of Harvard. And the Harvard philosopher George Santayana wrote only a year before in the Harvard Monthly, "No wonder all America loves Yale, where American conditions are vigorous, American instincts unchecked, and young men are trained and made ready for the keen struggles of American life."
Their initiates have gone on in the political world to be governors, ambassadors, Supreme Court chief justices, CIA directors, secretaries of state, war defense, and treasury, including Trump's, and of course presidents. In the arts, they have won Pulitzer Prizes and Academy Awards and Emmys. At the university itself, the philanthropists among them have gifted the first 12 residential colleges, Sterling Library, the Law and Divinity School buildings, and the Yale Center for British Art.
Almost 50 years ago, the anthropologist Lionel Tiger, in his book Men in Groups, told us that, quote, secret societies are the consequence of an effort of individuals, usually and mainly men, to create the social conditions for exercising their gregarious propensities, the expression of which may be, or may seem to be, inhibited by the community. Now, add to this the allure of exclusive membership and the rapid social elevation in the adult world of what became best known as such groups, the Masons, and you had, in the New World, all the ingredients for the blossoming of fraternities, which in early 19th century America, I suspect you don't know, were alternatively called, without opprobrium, secret societies, and which by mid-century were building windowless fraternity houses at brand new colleges. Conversely, the Masons in America had flourished, but become more controversial. When a former member threatened exposure of their secrets, he was murdered, wrapped in chains, and sunk to the bottom of Lake Niagara, with his murderers acquitted in a courtroom run by a Masonic judge and packed with Masons.
Connection, it's never going to be broken. I mean, right to our graves. They'll be talking about this 100 years from now. Talk about it every day, somewhere. If I go to a foreign country, magic, what magic? I mean, it's the same everywhere.
You know you got this tight bond with this cat, and you don't have to see him for a year or two. But you're always going to be linked to him. Indiana State was on practicing, and we were waiting in the tunnel. We got there early. I wanted to definitely say hello to Larry, you know. When they came through, it was like nobody would say nothing. I wanted to go toward him, like his guys, like made sure that he didn't say nothing. And then they kind of start snickering, like, Michigan State, you in trouble. We're going to kill you guys tomorrow.
I probably did snub him.
It is Indiana State against Michigan State. I'm Bryant Gumbel, and the fans here are going bananas.
I mean, let's face it, if Larry Bird were black and came from Chicago, it wouldn't have been as big a deal. They were polar opposites. One black, one white, one outgoing, one shy. That was the charm of the attraction.
The Bird against Magic. All of the superlatives have been used, and believe me, all of them have been warranted.
Has had a cold shooting night.
I battled him, but I didn't have it.
Oh, there's the pass. It's all over. Michigan State University, national champions, 1979.
Magic, not only were you a leader on offense, I thought you did a great job on Larry Bird in the zone denying him the ball.
Yes, Coach gave us a good game plan to go against Larry Bird, and all we had to do was go out and do it. That's what we done.
And congratulations, Super Bowl game.
was going to haunt him forever, because we were going to see each other a lot.
The National Basketball Association, in its 33rd season, is troubled by diminishing crowds and declining television ratings, signs that fan interest may be waning.
If college basketball was flourishing at the end of the 1970s, the pro game was crumbling.
I think Magic wanted to be friends with Larry Bird. He wanted to be friends with him on the World Invitational Tournament, and Larry just wasn't very receptive. I think he wanted to be friends with him during the Final Four. Larry wouldn't even go over and shake his hand. So now Magic's saying, well, what's with this guy? Everybody loves me. How come you don't love me? And then they get to their rookie year, the first time they play each other, well, they have a very hard foul. And they have to be separated a little bit. And Magic's like, all right, well, the heck with this guy. You don't like me? Fine. All right, good. I don't like you either.
You know, he's a very competitive player, and I'm a very competitive player, and we go head to head, and we go for blood almost.
They were perfect archetypes for what was becoming the biggest story in sports.
The pillars represent the spiritual journey into higher states of consciousness through the integration of the masculine and the feminine.
Their competitive dislike emerged from a greater truth, that on the court, they were doppelgangers. Team-oriented stars who cared about winning above all else. Basketball savants who fused the substance of the 60s with the style of the 70s to create a new and exciting yet selfless way to play the game in the 1980s.
They were so similar in the way they competed. I mean, they were two halves of the same brain, but they sure as hell didn't want to recognize that their equal happened to be that other guy.
That's why we hated each other too, because we knew we were mirrors of each other.
I think for a while the two of them had to come to grips with that.
When the NBA and CBS signed a new TV deal before the 82-83 season, the rescue plan was simple. Sell more Bird and Magic, and sell them not just as ball players, but as arch-rival characters in their own dramatic saga.
You got this slick Showtime African-American guy out west, and you got the lunch bucket, floppy-haired white guy with the bruises all over his body. It's central casting. It's perfect.
I mean, this was like made in heaven. In 1979, this idea of Magic and Bird was created, and so that was sort of a no-brainer. We'd have a doubleheader. It would be the Celtics playing first and the Lakers playing second, and that's the way we did it.
It polarized the whole idea of lunch bucket versus Hollywood, white versus black. Just cemented all the differences between them.
Kids weren't wearing black gym shoes because they didn't want to be associated with the Larry Bird camp. You wore your white Converse.
The basketball rivals had morphed into cultural warriors, and race, more than ever, had become an unavoidable part of the conversation.
Yo!
But nothing about Bird and Magic had ever been as simple as black and white.
One of the big reasons this rivalry became so emblematic of so many things is because it was an easy dichotomy for people to understand.
Probably the biggest moment the NBA had up to that point. You had Boston and LA, East against West. It had all the elements of a classic showdown.
Including what was becoming the most inescapable element of all.
Did we know that blacks and whites were lining up, the whites with the Celtics, the blacks with... Of course we knew that.
Foundation in this resurgence was the Celtics and the Lakers, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson.
Pater, which means father, the sun, and mater, mother, the moon, okay, to create the union of opposites, the synthesis, the chemical wedding as it is known.
And we never tried to change each other. That's what made this relationship great.
And that creates this synthesis, this union of opposites called the chemical wedding, a lot of times in alchemy, okay? And that is the generative principle.
One of my pet peeves always is when people say, oh, Michael Jordan saved the NBA. Bullshit. Bullshit. Magic and Larry saved the NBA. That's who saved the NBA. Magic and Larry.
Magic and Larry. Bird and Magic. To the millions who once watched them, now more than ever, they are inseparable. A pair of athletes thrown together by the cosmos to compete. A pair of men who discovered a bond in the midst of that competition. Decades removed from the height of their rivalry, their bond endures. Two impossibly different men with a connection only they can fully grasp.
Picking up the ancient storyline where we left it last, it's time to come full circle with the NBA's first truly magical showcase of purple, gold, and green, where they knew polarity sold tickets.
Get a new guy on the team and he doesn't like the Celtics, you know? He has the Lakers on purple and gold and the other guy has the green on, and it just goes on and on.
Saves it from Magic Johnson and a brilliant play by James Harden.
Most all the banners hang from Boston Garden, and the rest of them hang from the phones. I think the last thing is Larry and I. That's it.
Tonight, Larry and Magic do it one more time.
The spectacle that was Larry and Irving. The showtime of spinning the league a complete 180, writing the reality for many sports fans. The final Magic vs. Bird matchup was February 15th, 1991. It was the only time where Larry Bird had a triple-double against Johnson. 11 points, 11 rebounds, and 11 assists. Larry Joe Bird's stats in his final regular season game versus Magic Johnson perfectly wraps up this story with confirmation from these final gematria decodes. From their NCAA championship meeting to clashing against each other in their first NBA Finals Game 7 was 5 years and 77 days. 5 years and 77 days between Magic vs. Bird championship meetups equals 1,111 in the Frank Baconist cipher, as well as Sir Francis Bacon secretly edited the King James Version Bible. Sports became religiously scripted in the 70s, and the cipher that decodes professional sports scripts. Hopefully now you see the magical wordplay ingrained into our reality.